Brendan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to talk to you today. So let's get started with a quick introduction of your company, RightMessage, what you guys do, and who your ideal customers are.
Yeah, so we make website and email personalization software. So we help companies segment their email list, segment their audience, get all that data, collect insights about it, and then use that data to change things like sales pages, emails, campaigns, or whatever else, to make it so the end result is a bit more one to one. So instead of having like a one size fits all broadcast email or a one size fits all product page, instead it'll change depending on who's looking at it.
Okay. And your ideal customers, who do you guys typically work with?
Yeah, so at the minute we have kind of like two ICPs, one of which is who we call like premium creators. So these would be like big name creators who have usually teams of people. So for example, Justin Welsh, Ali Abdaal, Tiago Forte, they're all customers of ours. And then the other side of it would be kind of like B2B SaaS. So companies like RightMessage who target different industries, target different job roles, different needs for the core product, and they want to basically be able to kind of automate and augment and automate what they're doing, probably with their manual sales team, both on their website and over email.
Interesting. So, do your clients typically have a certain number of traffic that they need to be driving to their website to see benefits of working with RightMessage, or what do those numbers look like?
Depends on, I mean, to be honest, a lot of the like SaaS companies and the SMBs we work with have relatively low volume. By low, I mean like maybe less than 10,000 visitors a month, but they tend to be selling higher ticket stuff. So, if you're an agency and you're selling like a 50K project, you can you can get results from us with less traffic than if you were a creator selling $100 course.
Mhm.
So it just depends on kind of what the average customer value is and the average lead value. But typically speaking, like the best fit for us are companies that already do pretty decent with like lead generation, and they already know how to sell their product and they just want to kind of optimize conversions.
Okay. And how did you guys arrive to working with creators in B2B SaaS? Was that the market that you targeted initially, or was there a few pivots to get there?
I think we did the kind of the dumb thing that a lot of companies do early on, where we didn't really have a target initially. We were just like, you have a website, we can personalize it. Where we came about actually was I was doing this on a consulting basis while I was running W freelancing for kind of bigger companies. So like Gumroad hired me, Teachable hired me, these different companies hired me to do consulting gigs. And actually with Teachable, Ankur Nagpal, who at the time was the CEO of it, once he was like, why don't you stop screwing around with like just doing this one off, like make what you've done for us a SaaS and let me invest in it, right? So that's actually where we started. And I think a lot of the creator angle initially came from the fact that that was what I was doing at the time. I was my day job when I started RightMessage was running W freelancing, which back in like 2018, creator wasn't really a term used as much, but I was selling courses and digital products and stuff like that. So I knew that world. I had been testing a lot of the tech that went into RightMessage on my own stuff. And a lot of the followers I'd built up online were people like me. So it kind of came about that way. But we've slowly started to shift more upmarket to, I don't mean upmarket in like better companies or anything like that, but just away from kind of one person companies to being, used by companies that have like in-house marketers who might have a person whose entire job is using RightMessage at the company.
Interesting. So you mentioned to me about a year ago, you hit a point in the company where the MRR dipped to under 10K, and you really had to think through a new strategy and what to do to kind of build the company back up going forward. Do you mind diving into that story? What happened there and what changed after, yeah, you guys hit that mark of under 10K MMR?
Yeah. So what happened was at our peak in like 2020-ish, we had got up to 35,000 a month. And then there were just some like personal issues that both my co-founder at the time and I had been going through. And both the result of which led both of us to really get really demotivated. And we kind of became absentee landlords where the product kept chugging along, but there wasn't like any new features being developed for it. Really wasn't much support, wasn't any marketing or anything like that. So like the natural thing of like it just a slow like decline to inevitably death, occurred. And then a little over a year ago, we were getting to the point where we realized, okay, well, eventually this is going to stop making money. So we should either like shut it down or maybe try to get a buyer to buy it, which is hard when it's a declining business, or one of us buys each other out. So I decided to buy out my business partner. And because I spent a good amount of money on that buyout, I needed to do something with it. So I ended up kind of working to rebuild the product, rebuilt the team. And we actually now, that was, like you said, I think we were just above 10K a little over a year ago, and now we just hit 23,000 a month. So we're on the improve, but it's still the slow like SaaS ramp up death, as Gail Goodman of Constant Contact called it. We're chugging along.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's always slow, but it seems like the confidence has grown again after that turn, and that things are on the upwards. And you mentioned that you guys introduced a services arm. I know you have a lot of experience doing consulting before. So can you dive into what the services arm of the company is and that new direction that you guys are going?
Yeah. So, because I was trying to build up the team, the investment money from 2018 is gone at this point. I mean, it started a long time ago. We kind of had to operate as full bootstrappers. So, I didn't want to put more of my personal money into it than what I had already put buying my partner's equity. So the idea that I had was, I knew there were people like Justin Welsh, who I mentioned, like Ali Abdaal, like Tiago Forte, and others like that, who they kind of wanted the outcome, but they weren't necessarily interested in learning how to do it and how to use the product. So basically, the thing that kind of I started doing was, I was like, okay, well, what if we could just do it everything? What if we used our product on your behalf? To be honest, this is something that other SaaS companies have done. Like I first remember there was a tool called, it was like a pop-up tool called Bounce Exchange way back when. And their whole thing was they had a really smart like OptiMonster thing, but you could only buy it by hiring their agency, and they would do all the copywriting and the design of it and everything else. So we kind of that's kind of what I ended up doing was, okay, well, what if we could do everything? And the motivation for me was, well, if we could do this right, first off, it's a nice chunk of money up front. So it's consulting, but it also gets us a paying customer. Secondly, we're able to do it right. We're able to set up the product correctly, which means they're more likely to be successful. And if they're more successful, more social proof, more testimonials, all that good stuff, right? Case study potential. Big thing being case study potential. And the next thing was, okay, well, if we're able to do that, we can also get powered by RightMessage on like Justin Welsh's website, on Ali Abdaal's website, and all these big websites. And ultimately get to the point where if you're a creator and you're like, I go on all these creators I look up to's website and I see this RightMessage thing, that sends a signal, right? So that ended up working really well. And I think a lot of our growth over the last year has been due to the fact that we've had these kind of flagship pillar customers who all came from services. They didn't just sign up for a trial and go. And that was motivation behind it. And we're still doing that now. We're not doing it. It used to be more open-ended, but these days we have effectively a done-for-you setup service. And that's primarily where we're getting a lot of our new customers now.
So I understand the consulting portion of it. What you're doing is are you implementing RightMessage on their website, getting the segmentation data, then writing the copy and sending out those emails and tracking the results? That's the services portion?
We were actually ghostwriting for a lot of the early clients. These days, we don't do that any longer. At this point, what we're doing now is the issue is a lot of the clients we get and the customers we get, they're not switching from a competitor. Like they're doing segmentation for the very first time. Which the issue with that is they don't know what they need to be doing. They don't know what should I be tracking, how do I get that data, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And because we've done this literally hundreds of times now, we've got it pretty down, right? So they come to us and they say, look, we want to be able to get a lot of data and enrich contacts in our email platform with this data so we can send personalized emails, we can do all that good stuff. But we're not sure what kind of data we want to get and how to collect the data. So then we go and do like a bit of a research phase and then the implementation phase where we're literally just logging into their RightMessage account on their behalf and setting it all up, which again, we can do really quickly because we use the product every day. So for us, we just go in and get everything set up for them. And at this point now they've got their credit card plugged in. So now they're, paying us a few $100 a month on top of the consulting service. So yeah, I mean, it's basically just, as you mentioned, Patrick McKenzie earlier, a lot of this came from him early on, which was, he was giving a talk at MicroConf a few years back. And he was saying that there was so much potential for like freelancers or agencies to do software as a service as a service. So you basically just use software products on people's behalf, which a lot of AI agencies, frankly, that's what they do these days. They're just like a middleman between ChatGPT and a client, right? So yeah, that's kind of how it ended up working out.
I wonder if there will be a day that happens where we have software as a service as a complete acronym, and people start using that.
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I think actually Patrick on his blog, if you Google like Patrick McKenzie, SaaS, like he's written about this. So yeah.
Oh, it does exist.
And again, this isn't new. Like I remember years ago, like when I was first starting W freelancing in the early 2010s, I switched from MailChimp to Infusionsoft, which is now called Keep. And to sign up for an account, you had to pay $2,000 and you'd get like 4 hours of consulting time with that, where they'd walk through like, okay, what are your goals with email marketing? What are you trying to do? And they kind of personally onboard you into the product and also talk about how to best set up the product for you. And it was brilliant in retrospect because no one's going to cancel after like a month or two if they're already in the hole $2,000. So it's a good churn reducer. And it makes it more likely that people use the product correctly. So again, we're not pioneers in any respect for doing this, but it was kind of the thing that we were noticing, like, okay, we could just try to optimize our onboarding and like get more traffic and all that kind of stuff. Or we just get these nice big bursts of consulting revenue while also getting really big monthly customers through that and getting case studies and getting powered by on big sites with big traffic.
Yeah, I love the idea, especially because you guys, as you mentioned, you had investor money, but you've basically been bootstrapped the last little bit. And this is a way to provide you guys with cash to just fuel
and
that
it's not just random. I mean, I think you see a lot of early stage SaaS companies that will just do random like consulting just to pay the bills. And we were doing that, but it's also growing the company, right? So it's not like throwaway consulting.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's kind of like a top of funnel. It's a layer on top of the SaaS in your funnel, but you guys get paid a lot for it.
Exactly. Yeah,
I love that. I want to ask you, because a lot of the inbound email marketing stuff is new to me, and it's something I really would love to learn a lot more about. Is this segmentation basically what you guys are doing at RightMessage? Have people been doing this before? Or how were you doing this before RightMessage and having a SaaS tool for it? Because what I'm trying to understand is this sort of segmentation of visitors on your website and the people who I guess are already in their realm. Is this something that's really new and well known in email marketing? Or is this something that you guys are kind of pioneering?
I think no, we're definitely not pioneering it because people, like most people doing email marketing, by email marketing, I know we were talking earlier about like the distinctions between it. And when I say email marketing, I'm thinking of like what Seth Godin would call permission-based marketing, which is somebody comes and downloads like a lead magnet or joins your newsletter and explicitly opts in to hear more from you. So that's when I say email marketing, that's what I'm getting at. So often, people in the past have done like, they've used form tools like Typeform, or they've used quiz tools or whatever else to get segmentation data. Oftentimes, though, what I've found is that very few people ever correlate that information with individual contact records. So they might survey their email list and say, hey, we want to find out like what kind of content we should create for you. And then they'll have these nice like charts and reports, but they don't have that data individually attached to the people who answered, right? So What we do is we make it easy to get that data, but we also make it really seamless to make it so that data gets attached to every contact in your email platform. So that if you ever wanted to say, hey, I want to email everyone on my list who uses HubSpot, runs an agency, and is struggling with X, I just go into my email platform and wire it up that way, and I can fire off an email to those people. So that's what RightMessage does. Because a lot of people, when they build an email list, they build up a list of like thousands of email addresses and maybe first names, but that's pretty much it. So we make it so we get that, but we also help you get data about what they're struggling with, what they've tried, who they are, what their goals are, all that kind of stuff that you can then use to make it so when you do send them messages automatically, it's a little more one-to-one. And frankly, like the people that get this best are sales teams, because it's a good sales team, a good salesperson, they don't read off a script. They have a playbook of talking points, but they'll modify what they say depending on who they're speaking with. So if you're like, I don't know, if you're in finance, they'll drop examples of customers who are in finance that they've worked with, right? They'll speak more your language. If you're technical, they'll talk more technically with you. If you're not, they won't. Like that's normal, right? Like that's how sales occurs. But generally speaking, most people's websites and most people's emails are like brochures where it's the same thing for everyone. So we enable kind of a middle ground between, yeah, you've got like an infinitely scalable thing like a web page or an email campaign that could go out to 10 people or 100,000 people. But regardless of how many people are on the receiving end, we can help you make it so the content itself, the copy itself, can be specific to the individual recipient in a way that you would one-to-one. But let's face it, none of us, especially if you have a big email list and you're selling, cheaper things, you're not going to get on Zoom calls with every single email subscriber. So this gives you basically the way to do a lot of the same benefits of high touch sales, but infinitely scalable.
Yeah, I like that analogy with the one-on-one sales, because obviously if you're talking to somebody, you can see like the person, you get the vibe of the conversation, etc.
Yeah,
And you can
pick up on the behaviors. They're like, oh, they're skeptical, they're whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you look at a list, and that's kind of the good and the bad thing about technology, is we can reach out to a lot more people at once, but we lose that personalization aspect. And it's just like, all right,
Yeah.
click send, it's a bunch of names in an email list, and we go from there.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, what kind of results have you seen for people who have been sending out their email campaigns without this segmentation, this personalization? And then once they add in RightMessage and the segmentation, what sort of results are your clients seeing?
Yeah. So we're working on a whole series of case studies, but the ones that we have published now, like for example, Justin Welsh, he launched a new course back last January, so almost a year ago, or more than a year ago, I should say, a month ago. He launched a big course, and it's called the Creator MBA. And what he did is when you join the waitlist for the course, he asks you questions about like what your goals are, what kind of business you run. Like, are you a coach? Are you a freelancer? Are you a course creator? Like, what do you do? He also asks you things like, are you full-time? Is it a side hustle? Is it something you want to start? So he got all this great data. So he ended up getting about 20,000 people on the wait list, and almost all of which were fully segmented. And then what he did is when he launched the course, he would do things like when you're getting the sales emails, if you were a coach, he would talk about how he has deep experience in coaching. So built that kind of like, he gets you kind of angle. And he would talk about how like module 4 is going to be all about basically helping you do the problem that you stated and so on. So you would get these emails that it's like, wow, every email he's sending me it's all about how this course is going to help me as a coach start a new business. Whereas somebody else might get the same launch emails, but they're an agency and they want to scale up. They're not going to get stuff about starting. They're going to get stuff about scaling. And it's the same product being pitched. So he did a controlled A/B test or split test on this, and he ended up getting 38% more sales through the personalization stuff, which resulted in about $650,000 in new revenue for him in the span of about a week. So yeah, I mean, it took him a few extra hours to wire all this up, but he made $650K. So, happy days for him. And then we've seen, it's been a year, but this stuff's still in effect. Like his sales pages are still personalized and stuff. And he's getting consistently about 110% increase in sales from his sales pages when tested against the control, which is the default sales page he has that it tries to say the same thing to everyone. So yeah, I mean, that's fairly typical, to be honest. Tiago Forte, who I mentioned earlier, he's actually got better results. He's averaging about 62% more sales through personalized content. And yeah, I mean, it's one of these things. I think like it's not black magic. It's just the ability to niche your own business in it, like dynamically. So instead of saying like, imagine we were talking about double your freelancing and the background I had with that. Like if you were a web designer and you had double your web design freelancing.com, that would be like a lot more appealing than something more generic like double your freelancing, right? Like that's because everyone wants the thing made just for them. But practically, Zach's not going to go and spin off like 50,000 brands for every kind of like freelancer. So this allows you to say, look, well, if I know you're a designer because you told me, why don't I just like spit out testimonials on the website from designers? Because we all want to see people like us, right? And that's frankly where all of this came from for me. Is I was doing this on W Freelancing, but with custom code. I was saying, okay, let's just get some data. And then if I know, like, if job type equals design, then output design testimonials. Else, if it's developer, output developer testimonials. And for me, as a developer by training, that was easy to do. But when people like Ankur over at Teachable were like, marketers don't get this, like make it easy for them, give them a point and click way of doing this. That's where the SaaS was born.
Interesting. Yeah. I've noticed as I'm an engineer myself. I've worked for the last 5.5 years as a software engineer, and I'm learning more about the marketing stuff now. And I'm seeing it from the other perspective, where you have this whole world of marketing stuff, and there's a lot to learn as a developer. But as I've been diving into it, especially within the double your freelancing community, I've seen other people who are less technical and some of the problems that they have, like building automations or just understanding like how to scrape websites and like these different engineering stuff that you can do to basically improve your marketing. And so it's interesting to hear that from you, as I see it as very powerful to have that engineering background and just understand how computers work, websites work, etc., and then be able to apply that to marketing problems.
Oh, if you can code and you can think like a coder and you understand human psychology and marketing, you're worth a lot.
Yeah.
Like you can do so much stuff. Yeah.
So I'm curious, because now you have these really big names using RightMessage. What are some of the growth strategies that you have going forward? How do you plan on growing the business?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of, funny enough, a lot of the things that I used to grow W Freelancing early on. Doing a lot of webinars these days. We're putting other partnerships where, like, I mentioned Justin Welsh and his results a second ago. I'm going to do a webinar with him where we basically go behind the scenes on everything. His RightMessage account, his email marketing account. We're going to basically give a complete expose of everything he's done and the results he's had. He's going to invite his list. I'm going to invite ours. His is much bigger, but that'll hopefully get us a good amount of leads from that, who then end up buying RightMessage. So that's one thing. We've done a lot with, we're even though SEO is kind of like what's going to happen with it, right? With the rise of AI, we are investing a lot more into programmatic SEO. So
Nice.
What I mean by that is, we integrate with all these tools. We have different use cases. We have different content management systems people use: WordPress, Shopify, Squarespace, all these different things. We can programmatically generate landing pages that are like personalize your Webflow website using HubSpot data or something, right? So we're going to do a lot of that, which has worked well for. I've got a good friend he's one of the best SEO people I know, and he's like, yeah, you do that, and that'll work well, because we've gotten traffic that way already. But at the moment, they're like landing on our integration guide on how to install HubSpot into your RightMessage account, which is not exactly the best first impression, right? Like it's a help doc. So we're going to be doing that. And we're also going to dabble soon into paid acquisition because our lifetime value is high enough that we could probably afford to do that. And possibly even scale up a very small sales team, mostly an inbound sales team. So, when we get like new trials or new leads for people who are fit a certain like lead quality, they'll get them on the phone and do a live demo and all that kind of stuff.
It makes sense for the inbound since you guys have all the infrastructure there to segment those lists and then go from there. So I want to ask about the business model because right now you have Justin Welsh who has, and I believe it's Tiago, how do you say his?
Forte. Yeah, Forte. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who I assume have large email lists. Do you?
Yeah, they each have about 200K on their list.
Okay. So like when you're targeting new customers, are you looking for people who have large email lists and having like a few larger clients there who maybe pay a larger monthly fee to use RightMessage? Or would it be going after people who maybe are just starting with their email lists, etc., and don't have a large one, but getting more of those clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things like we try to shy away from getting people who are just starting out using us. Because the mistake that I think people make is like we're a conversion optimization tool. We're like Optimizely if you've ever done split testing. And if you don't have traffic, if you don't have buyers, like all the optimization in the world isn't going to do anything. So we try to really focus on companies that, traffic doesn't mean everything, but it's a strong signal. Like if you're getting consistently, say 100 new opt-ins a day to your email list, that sends a signal in a way that somebody who gets like one a week, like just can't, it's just not comparable in any way. I mean, again, the distinction would be, and this is something I learned the hard way early on in my career as a web developer, is I did a website once for a yacht company when I lived in Florida. And they were telling me like, yeah, we're hoping to get one customer a year, right? Like their whole job was, their job of their website that they were paying us money for was to get one customer a year. That's it. So like, again, it just depends on what you're offering and what you're selling. If you're selling a $20 ebook, getting one customer a year is not viable. So yeah, I mean, with us, the bigger creators tend to have bigger teams and they tend to be a little more sophisticated with what they're doing. So they can it's worthwhile for, like with Justin, with or without RightMessage, he would have made $1 million in his launch. But because of RightMessage, he made 1.6 million, right? So like, even without RightMessage, he would have had a good launch. But it is better when we have more volume to play with because it tends to work better that way.
Okay. And in general, with all your experience in email marketing, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make with email marketing, inbound email marketing specifically?
One big thing is just they either send too much email or they don't send anything at all. So I think like with the latter example, for example, I mentioned how Justin, when he launched his course, he built a wait list. A lot of products will do that. They'll have like a opt-in if you want to hear more about this when we go live. And then they won't send anything until they're live. And then you get an email saying like, oh, so-and-so is now available. And you're like, who is this? Right? Like you forget who that is. So I think like it's important to do kind of what we did with him, which is like, we kind of kept the list warm. We were sending them valuable content to kind of build up the anticipation and excitement for the launch. So I think like that's one thing. Another thing is just not thinking through like the logistics of what's actually happening. So somebody just joins your website. They don't really know much about you, but something won them over about your landing page. So they opt in. And then you send them like a bunch of stuff and there's a total disconnect between, hey, they're new, they don't know you. They don't really know like what you're going to help them with and what you're sending. So I think the biggest thing is, I don't know if you remember, when I was a kid, I mean, I'm 40 now, so I'm probably a bit older, but like when I was a kid, there was these books called Choose Your Own Adventure Stories where you'd buy this book and it'd be like, go to page 50 to go into the cave and go to page 30 to leave. And that's how I think, like, when I think of personalization, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about putting names, like first names at the top of email addresses. I'm thinking, how can we make it so, depending on who you are, depending on your goals, depending on what you want, how do we make the experience you have with us so much better? Like, like it just very dialed in, very specific to your needs. So I think a lot of marketers don't really focus on that. They just kind of think of this like bullhorn kind of shotgun approach of like, if I just send enough crap and throw it against the wall, some will stick and some will buy. And I'm not really a fan of that, because I've seen firsthand, like, to go back to double your freelancing, I've done a few conferences with that brand. And I remember I was we did it in Sweden a few years, and I was there and I was talking to an attendee. And I was just kind of asking her, like, why are you here? Right? Like, what was that progression like? And she's like, well, like 3 years ago, I saw you on like Twitter. Somebody mentioned you. And then I read your blog posts for like the next year or two. And then I bought this like double your freelancing rate course that you had for a few $100s. And that really helped. And I made it really caused my business to explode. And then I started listening to your podcast. And then like a year later, you emailed me about this like thing in Sweden, and I'm in India. So that's like far. But I was like, well, his stuff has been so good. I know it's going to be a great event. And it's like, that was a multi-year progression, right? Or if you were doing stuff like high touch with like needing, like you would if you're selling consulting, you generally don't court a potential client for 3 years. But with email, you can. With this kind of email marketing at scale, that's totally viable. So I think a lot of people have this idea that you just need to like sell, rather than think like, I just want to deliver a lot of really great value, over deliver, and then kind of set the expectation that like, you've got a lot of good stuff from my free content. Imagine how much better the paid stuff is. And that's kind of been the way I've done everything, including RightMessage, where I'm like, I just want to show people what you can do. I want to give them tons of stuff that they can do with the tools they already use. Then I want to be like, if you want to make your life easier and better and get better results, there's RightMessage for you.
Yeah, I like that. And having it as a long-term process and really understanding like, hey, it might take a while, but you're building up a relationship with somebody, as you said, courting that person. So when you're going through this process, because I'm learning a lot about cold outreach right now, and one of the things we look at is we track our numbers very diligently. So it would be, I know it's a different kind of email marketing, but this is how the general idea would be. If I send out 300 emails, maybe I get 20% replies. So that would be 60 replies. And then maybe I book, out of the 20 replies, I book 5 meetings, etc. And you kind of work down the funnel where you understand how many emails equals how many replies equals how many meetings booked equals how many sales closed. And you can understand your numbers there to be able to predict how many emails you need to send out in order to get a client. So I'm wondering, with the inbound email marketing now, are you guys tracking your numbers in terms of like traffic, signups, segmentations, email sent, etc., to lead? I guess the funnels will be different for everybody, but to lead to a sale. And so do you guys track those numbers? And if so, what's that process look like, and what sort of things are you thinking about?
Yeah, so we do. So when it comes to anonymous visitors to our website, which is how we get people on our list, we get 8.5% onto our list. So we get 1,000 people, 85 to our list. From that, our conversion rate to a free trial is about 15%. So 85 means we'll get like 10 trials, right? Mm-hmm. Trial conversion rates right now are about 40%. So yeah, if I get 1,000 people, I should be getting 4 paid accounts. Average paid account value is $2,400. So that gives me $10,000 for every 1,000 visitors, basically. And so it's all math, it's all formulaic at this point. I mean, it's obviously not individual stories and stuff involved and everything like that, but for the most part, I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, considering if I can keep the same quality of traffic, yeah, that's where we are, right? So there's all these levers I can play with, like, how do I increase the lifetime value? How do I increase the trial conversion rate? How do I increase? Well, we've done a lot of work on getting it up to 8.5% opt-ins. But yeah, we do measure everything.
And I want to ask them, what's your thought process for identifying a weak point in that funnel and then maximizing it? So for example, if one of those numbers are down, like, what Just, I'd love to understand your thought process there of identifying those weak points and then what you do to solve that problem.
Yeah. So like, for example, with the top of funnel stuff, so getting overall opt-ins, we were at 2.5%. So obviously there's the question of like, do we have better traffic quality? Maybe. But a lot of it boiled down to, well, let's test multiple offers. What if we go from an email course to what we have now, which is a personalized playbook assessment? What impact would that have? We also realized some of our traffic were agencies using RightMessage for their clients. So for them, the messaging around RightMessage can help your business do better didn't work. So what we started doing is if we found out you're an agency, we're talking about how you can sell personalization as a service to your clients and make 3 to 10K a month per client on top of whatever you're making off them. And so the idea there is, how do we teach people to become, not only get more money from their existing clients, but also make themselves more competitive because they're offering a service that other email marketing agencies or whatever are not offering. So yeah, we a lot of testing basically. And it's always a matter of like, some experiments will fail, some will work. Fails and your opt-ins dip or your conversions dip, cool. Like, log it as I paid for data, and then try something else and keep doing it.
Awesome. And Brendan, I know one of your strategies and one of the things you focus on is providing education to people. I can see you have your book back there. This is personal. Can you expand on the book and the content that you put out there and just let the audience know where they can learn more about email marketing?
Yeah. So this is the book, if you can see it there. Yeah. This is personal. I launched this in October of last year of 2023. So more than a year ago. And that was kind of the compendium of like, if I could just stitch together every blog post I've written into a cohesive narrative, this would be it, right? So the goal in doing that book was as a way to not only get more speaking engagements, but also to make it so I can kind of give this away effectively at cost, like for free. Like, I don't mind, we haven't done this yet, but I want to start doing things like, hey, you sign up for a trial. Why don't you upgrade your account today, and I will send you a free copy of my book, which is all about personalized marketing. And that's kind of the thinking there is, because we're going after a lot of companies who are not switching from a competitor, we need to kind of show people what's possible and that it's obtainable, right? So we need to make it very clear, like, hey, here are some of the results that people like you have had. Here's how they did it. And here's, most importantly, why the same can work for you. So, our model is very much like, we would rather show people how they can, our focus now in 2025 is like, how do you get more from your existing traffic, whether you're paying for that traffic or it's free? Like, how do you improve the results from it? So what we're doing is we're saying, look, here are some ways to think about your newsletter. Here are some ways of thinking about your welcome series that you send new subscribers to your list. Here are some ways that you can think about doing things like changing up what you're offering. Instead of getting people on your newsletter, what if you give them a certain type of lead magnet? How do you think through what kind of lead magnet should you create? Is it an email course? Is it a PDF download? Is it a whatever, right? Like, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people where I ultimately want to be. And this is kind of what I teach actually in the book too, is I want to give people the blueprint, and tell them, like, here's what you can do, right? Like, here you are today, here's where you can be. And that's why it's important to do the segmentation, because we can then benchmark where they are today, because everyone's different. So here's where you are today, here's where you want to be, here's a way of going from here to there. Once I teach them that, they have 3 options. They can either do nothing, right? Which is unfortunately the default position. Like, okay, that's cool, but it's like, how many people have been told how to get fit and they just never do it, right? So you can do nothing. You could go at it on your own, cobble together different tools, and hopefully be able to implement what I just taught you. You'll probably mess up a bunch, but that's life. We all get there that way. Or the third option is, we've got the shortcut, which is RightMessage. The software product implements everything we just taught you and makes it really easy to do. Oh, and by the way, if you don't want to even bother doing that. You can just pay us more money and we'll do it all for you. And that's kind of our thinking is like, we don't want to back people into a quarter. We want to say, get them to the point where they're sold on the outcome and the reality of that outcome. Because one of the best marketing things I ever learned was that you never want to both educate and sell. You don't want to put somebody in front of like a product website and need to convince them that they need this thing and then convince them that you're the right provider for that thing at the same time. So we try to make it so by the time they come to seriously check out RightMessage, they're already sold that they need the outcome that the tool gives them. Now it's just a matter of determining, is the pricing right? Is it, is all that stuff correct?
Awesome. Love that. And where can people go online to learn more about you and the content that you put out and get educated?
So rightmessage.com. I'm still writing all the emails. We don't have a team of ghostwriters or anything like that. So we're doing a lot of events. We're doing a lot of email content. We've got a good catalog of it already on the blog. That's probably the best place. You can find me on Twitter or X at Brennan Dunn. I'm also there on LinkedIn. And if you want to pick up the book, This Is Personal. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble in the US. Or you can go to thisispersonalbook.com and just quick links to like all the different retailers.
Awesome, Brennan. And as we start to wrap up here, I got one last question for you. In all your years of entrepreneurship and in all your ventures, what's the number one piece of advice you give to your younger self?
So I wish I would have told we're both developers, right? And I wish I could have told myself back in 2008 when I started freelancing as a coder that no client is ever going to pay me. They're not paying me for code, right? Like they're paying me because they happen to think that the code I write for them will benefit their business. It wasn't until I started to sell that outcome and focus less on the code. That's when everything changed. And that applies now. Like no one's buying RightMessage. They're buying a better tomorrow. It's just internalizing that. Like it's hard to do, especially if you're a coder. Spend a lot of time getting good at this stuff. You're like, it's comfortable to cling to your craft. But yeah, if you're a coder who can learn how to like understand the business outcomes and like why it matters, then you're, like you mentioned, marketing, developer, coder / business designer / business. You understand that they're not paying for pretty designs. They're paying for designs that will hopefully get more people to buy. You internalize that, you're a unicorn at that point.
And it's funny because even though I like how you said you have to internalize it, because sometimes you could even know this as a developer getting into that, and then you catch yourself doing it, or you review the copy you write on your website. You're like, no, I'm talking about technology again. Let's take a step back.
Oh, I'm guilty of that still. Like, yeah, it's hard to let go of.
All right, Brendan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus.